Okay, so here's the introduction to Ellen Cushman, the Dean's Professor of Civic Sustainability in the Department of English at Northeastern University and co-director of the NU Lab for Digital Humanities and Computational Social Sciences. A citizen of the Cherokee Nation, she's project leader of the Digital Archive for Indigenous Language Persistence. Her research explores how people use language and literacy to create and endure change. DAILP has received generous support from the National Archives, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Harry Helios Foundation, and the Mellon Foundation. And today she's going to tell us about translating Ecologies, the Digital Archive of Indigenous Language Persistence.
Thank you so much for having me and for inviting us along, Barbara. I'm really happy to be here and sharing with you all the Digital Archive of Indigenous Language Persistence. But let me start by saying that Northeastern sits on the homelands of the Wampanoag tribes, and there are 3 federally recognized tribes that are still in existence today. And those tribes, as are our Cherokee people, are trying to persist with our language and are continuing to persist with our language, so that we can be in a position to develop a corpus as big as the corpus that Sarah just brought us into, which was really quite beautiful and amazing and really interesting. The corpora analysis that Sarah was introducing us to isn't quite possible yet within our corpus, because really our mission, our goal, is to do the recuperative work of Indigenous language persistence. To do that recuperative work, we're borrowing on the ecologies of practices, the reading, writing, speaking, and listening practices that our peoples have used since time immemorial to continue and persist in our ways of being and knowing. Our ecologies of thought are very closely linked to our languages, and I can get into that a little bit more, but let me do so by introducing you to DAILP overview, generally speaking. And I'm going to work at about a 5,000 or 10,000 foot level here to just walk you through DAILP and what we're after, and then show you a little bit of our GitHub site that gives you a sense of our developmental workflows. You will find our code there. And if you would like to talk with us about those technical aspects of the code that we're developing to hand off to Indigenous nations around the world, and the US and Canada especially, then I've certainly made our software engineer available to you as well. And Naomi Trevino is in the audience and can answer any specific questions that you might have about our code. But first, I'd like to start with the origin story of DAILP and give you a QR code to be able to access our site. DAILP is an Indigenous language persistence archive, meaning that we bring in and ingest manuscript pages from archives around the country that were written in and on Indigenous languages terms, so that we can begin to continue the reading and writing and speaking practices of our peoples, thereby developing deeper word bases, larger understandings of our dictionary, and document our language, especially with the speakers that are still with us today. More importantly, we are giving our community members another ecology to practice our languages so that they can read, write, speak, and listen to our languages as they're translating these documents and adding to our corpora. That means that when they're done with all of that translation work, they produce a reading ecology, a way of entering into those reading writing practices with people by way of digital edited collections. And they enter into a translation ecology if they've been invited to do so by the community groups who are in that recuperative process of gathering back together all of our language practices. And then I'll share with you a little bit about our DAILP workflows. Moving right along. This is an Indigenous language manuscript. It was written by Gordon Henry, or excuse me, let me just start over completely. This is the Cherokee syllabary. And the Cherokee syllabary is an 86 character system that was developed by Sequoyah in 1821. We have written thousands of pages and handwritten documents like this that are in archives around the country. Currently, we don't have a very good way of translating those documents with our language learning teams. And our goal within DAILP was to create a reading and writing ecology that allowed us to do this. And through this translation of documents like this, we are able to delve very deeply into our language practices, recuperate those practices, develop lexical data sets, and then begin to understand and document further our languages as a result. DAILP has 3 very general goals. It's a community-based archive, meaning that we work first and foremost with all of the language practices that our communities are using, our Indigenous language communities are using. We do this to represent and continue forward with their interpretations of the past, their knowledges about the language, and their knowledges of the people, places, and communities that were represented by these historical documents that are in archives around the country. Our goal is to create a space, an ecology, if you will, and an interface that allows people to continue practicing our languages with the speakers who still are with us. All of the Cherokee materials that I'll be talking about today were created to prove the concept of DAILP, that we could create digital edited collections, that we could analyze the language, that we could develop lexical data sets. And once we proved the concept of that, we were able to gather enough grants to be able to scale and refine our interface, such that we're now in a position of having several grantors who have supported our work through its 3 phases that have taken place over the last decade or so. When we originally thought of DAILP, we did so with all Indigenous languages in mind. I developed this with Gordon Henry, who is a White Earth member, a speaker of Anishinaabe. And there are many documents written in 2 or 3 different syllabaries that they have developed and writing systems that were developed for them, as well as English transliterations. Our funders have been very generous with us in helping us continue and to seed the practices that allow us to persist in our language practices. Our current phase of work is supported by the Mellon Foundation with a digital edited collection currently underway, supported by the National Archives. You can see DAILP again here if you click on that QR code. Moving right along. Thank you. I'm not sure who's unmiked there, but I appreciate the nice comment, and I'm going to presume that it was for us. So the reading ecology of DAILP includes the ability to bring in a manuscript from archives, partner libraries, and museums around the country. This particular document came from the Yale Beinecke Museum library, rare manuscript library. And we ingest this and display it to our people within our communities. They read this aloud and record audio for it. And then we're able to display them and their audio reading aloud a text as it would have been practiced not too very long ago. These documents in particular were created in 1964. And we're super pleased that the National Archives is supporting the Willie Jumper manuscripts. This is one of the stories that Willie Jumper wrote. And we are incredibly honored to be working with Alice Jumper, the youngest of his children, the youngest of his 13 children. And she has contributed a number of these audio recordings that you'll be seeing in the next edited collection that we're creating. That is just for Cherokee. You'll see as well that when you click on the translation tab, you're able to see the free translation that our translation teams have created for us in English. Those are the overall narratives of what you're looking at. You'll see a list of all of the stories that we have created so far. We've created chapters around those and in those translations, depending on your display settings in the upper right-hand corner, right about there, you would be able to display levels of detail into our reading environment. Our reading practices then are trying to mimic the reading practices that we would have had in the 1820s when Sequoyah developed the Sequoyah and the Sequoian in the first place. If you dig a little bit deeper into one individual story, you'll bring up a very deep annotation of this. This is for scholars and learners and community members really studying the language. If you click on the information button of any one of those words in an story, what you would find is very detailed information about that single word. And this is where the ecologies of thought are embedded in our language. So I want to spend just a minute here. When we bring up a word pain for you in each individual story, that word pain allows you to hear that word spoken aloud. It allows you to see the simple phonetics and the transcription of that word that was written using the Roman alphabet. But typically, it also shows you the interlinear gloss translation of that word such that you can understand how the morphemes connect together and carry meaning, and how it is that that meaning unfolds over time and space for individuals and in a document. Pay attention to this word pain because it's going to come back pretty soon. That word pain and that level of detail is exactly the kind of thing that our learners today need, because there are very few speakers left who can teach them about the language and help them practice it and hear it practiced. And those speakers live in pretty rural places as it is. Remember that word pain I was telling you about? Well, it becomes central to our translation ecology. Here's what that looks like. So we have a digital edited collection. That's our reading environment. That's publicly available to everybody. Scholars can use those translations for scholarship, for example. Learners can use it to continue learning. But the real beauty of this, the real magic of it, is the translation environment that exists on the other side of that word pain. And this translation environment allows people to go back into those word pains and start doing the good work of practicing the language. And so the speakers are coming together with learners, they're coming together with younger generations, and they're sitting down side by side, and they're recording word by word audio, and the young ones are helping them with this. Then the young ones are transcribing the Cherokee syllabary, and into the bargain are learning the syllabary, which is pretty lovely because that continues our literate practices. And then we begin understanding the word parts with those who are in advanced study of the language. And added bonus, we begin commenting on each and every word. And those comments are internal to our group. And that helps everybody learn. So our speakers will tell people point blank, hey, you're not quite pronouncing that correctly. Go back and repronounce it, re-record it. Let me listen to your recording one more time, and we'll get it to a better place. And so they do. And then the editor of this, who's given a different set of permissions, can accept a comment and show a comment to readers if that's appropriate, or can decide not to display a comment. And of course, anybody commenting can delete their comments along the way. So those word panes actually become a portal between the reading and writing environments, the internal and the external. Finally, all you have to do is click the edit button and you're set to go. This is a sneak peek into the back end of, this is a sneak peek into the translation environment, I should say, not the back end, of the translation environment of our DAILP site. And so when you're invited to contribute to a collection with a team of speakers from an Indigenous language, you have some rights that have been given to you by the group, and those rights will allow you to enter into those word panes and contribute according to your expertise and how they've defined your role within the team. And you can see here that I have pretty deep role. Of course, this is a test, so I need to test all of that out. What's really beautiful about all of this, and we've just launched this, is that Cherokee speakers can record the overall audio as they're reading a document. And this is a brand new feature that we just launched 2 weeks ago. We're testing it out right now. It looks like it's working really well. It writes directly to our back end. And so we're building our lexical data set as we translate. And that's the glorious thing about this, because that feeds right into the reading environment, spits it back out so everybody can see it and see it published. All right, that sounds great, Ellen. What's your code look like? What do your workflows look like? How do you make all of this happen? The magic happens on our GitHub site. Many thanks to Haley Punis, who's also in our meeting today, and Kara Hollings, who are helping us revise this site so that we can hand off all of our workflows to individuals and communities. Remember, I mentioned to you that we're scaling this. We're packaging our software and handing it off to Indigenous peoples whenever they ask. And so far we've had quite a bit of interest, which is lovely, but we need to get it to a place where we can hand it off with the simplest possible workflows. Naomi's all over that. Naomi Trevino's in our audience today. You'll see that we have community-based practices if you're on our GitHub site, that we have deep annotation and analyses that we do with linguists and with language students from around the country and around the world. We do annotation and analysis. Our technical designs are laid out for you. Every single bit of our interface was created with individuals in the community. Finally, our workflows. And those are really hugely important because users contribute particular things and have their workflows. Our developers contribute particular things and have their workflows, as do our administrators. And all of us work together to create what becomes a software that we'll be packaging and handing off to folks. Oh, that sounds great, Ellen. So far, so good. Interesting use of a reading and writing environment to create an ecology of thought that then creates a corpus that maybe down the road, if enough people can contribute to it, you'll have enough to employ some of those really wonderful tools that Sarah was demonstrating. Well, what does it all mean to Cherokee speakers? I'm glad you asked. It means a lot. It seems that some people have not been able to hear the recording, so please let me recap very quickly. What John is talking about is the ways in which he's coming across words that his elders used to say, but that he hadn't heard spoken in years and years, and that he was able then to see it in writing. He'd never seen some of those words in writing, and then he was able to re-speak those and breathe life back into those words. And that helps a Cherokee language speaker who's one of the best speakers still here with us today, continue his own learning, reading, writing, and speaking practices that create those ecologies that help others come alongside. All righty. Thank you to those of you who could hear that, and I will be willing to share those slides with Barbara on the other side of this in the event that other folks couldn't hear those. And I want to move right along to our GitHub site and say thank you very, very much for all of your patience with us and yeah, no problem, Laura. Very nice to see you all today. I'm going to stop right here and turn it back over to Barbara.